Ghislaine Noelle Marion Maxwell is a British convicted sex offender and former socialite. In 2021, she was found guilty of child sex trafficking and other offences in connection with the financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. On June 28, 2022, she was sentenced in a New York court to 20 years imprisonment. Born in France, Maxwell was raised in Oxford. In the 1980s she attended Balliol College, Oxford, and then became a prominent member of London's social scene. Maxwell worked for her father, Robert Maxwell, until his death in 1991. She then moved to New York City, where she continued living as a socialite and had a relationship with Epstein. In 2012, Maxwell founded a non-profit group for the protection of oceans. Following sex trafficking allegations being brought by prosecutors against Epstein in July 2019, the organization announced cessation of operations the same month. Maxwell is a naturalized U.S. citizen and retains both French and British citizenship. On July 2, 2020, Maxwell was arrested and charged by the federal government of the United States with the crimes of enticement of minors and sex trafficking of underage girls, related to her association with Epstein. She was denied bail as a flight risk, with the judge expressing concerns regarding her completely opaque finances, her skill at living in hiding, and the fact that France does not extradite its citizens. On December 29, 2021, she was convicted on 5 out of 6 counts, including one of sex trafficking of a minor. She faces a second criminal trial for 2 charges of lying under oath about Epstein's abuse of underage girls. Early life. Ghislaine Maxwell was born in 1961, in Maisons-Laffitte, Yvelines, France, the 9th and youngest child of Elizabeth, a French-born scholar, and Robert Maxwell, a Czechoslovak-born British media proprietor. Her father was from a Jewish family, and her mother was of Huguenot descent. Maxwell was born 2 days before a car accident that left her 15-year-old brother Michael in a prolonged coma until his death in 1967. Her mother later reflected that the accident had an effect on the entire family, and surmised that Ghislaine had shown signs of anorexia while still a toddler. Throughout childhood, Ghislaine lived with her family in Oxford at Headington Hill Hall, a 53-room mansion, where the offices of Pergamon Press, a publishing company run by Robert Maxwell, were also located. Her mother said that all her children were brought up as Anglicans. She studied first at Oxford High School for Girls in North Oxford and then, aged 9, was enrolled at Edgerley Hall Boarding Preparatory School in Somerset, followed by Headington School at age 13. Maxwell attended Marlborough College to study for A-levels, before going on to earn a degree in modern history with languages from Balliol College, Oxford in 1985. Maxwell had a close relationship with her father and was reportedly his favourite. According to Tatler, Maxwell recalled that her father installed computers at Headington in 1973 and her first job was training to use a Wang 2200 and later programming code. The Times reported that he did not permit Ghislaine to bring her boyfriends home or to be seen with them publicly, after she started attending Oxford University. Career. Ghislaine Maxwell was a prominent member of the London social scene in the 1980s. She founded a women's club named after the original Kit Kat Club and was a director of Oxford United Football Club during her father's ownership. She also worked at the European, a publication Robert Maxwell had established. According to Tom Bower, writing for the Sunday Times, in 1986 Robert Maxwell invited her to the naming in her honor of his new yacht the Lady Ghislaine, at a shipyard in the Netherlands. Maxwell spent a large amount of time in the late 1980s aboard the yacht, which was equipped with a jacuzzi, sauna, gym, and disco. The Scotsman said Robert Maxwell had also tailor-made a New York company for her. The company, which dealt in corporate gifts, was not profitable. The Sunday Times reported that Ghislaine Maxwell flew to New York on November 5, 1990 to deliver an envelope on her father's behalf that, unknown to her, was part of a plot initiated by her father to steal $200 million from Berlitz shareholders. After Robert Maxwell purchased the New York Daily News in January 1991, he sent Ghislaine to New York City to act as his emissary. In May 1991, Maxwell and her father took Concorde on business to New York, from where he soon departed for Moscow and left her to represent his interests at an event honoring Simon Wiesenthal. In November 1991, Robert Maxwell's body was found floating in the sea near the Canary Islands and the Lady Ghislaine. Soon afterwards, Ghislaine flew to Tenerife, where the yacht was berthed, to attend to his business paperwork. Ghislaine attended her father's funeral in Jerusalem alongside Israeli intelligence figures, President Chaim Herzog, and Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir, who gave his eulogy. Although a verdict of death by accidental drowning was recorded, Maxwell has since said she believes her father was murdered, commenting in 1997, "He did not commit suicide. That was just not consistent with his character. I think he was murdered." After his death, Robert Maxwell was found to have fraudulently appropriated the pension assets of Mirror Group newspapers, a company that he ran and in which he held a large share of ownership, to support its share price. Pension funds in excess of £400 million were said to be missing, and 32,000 people were affected. Two of Maxwell's brothers, Ian and Kevin, who were the most involved with their father in daily business dealings, were arrested on June 19, 1992 and charged with fraud related to the Mirror Group pension scandal. The brothers were acquitted 3.5 years later in January 1996. Ghislaine Maxwell moved to the United States in 1991, shortly after her father's death. Maxwell was provided with an annual income of £80,000 from a trust fund established in Liechtenstein by her father. By 1992, she had moved to an apartment of an Iranian friend overlooking Central Park. At the time, Maxwell worked at a real estate office on Madison Avenue and was reported to be socializing with celebrities. She quickly rose to wider prominence as a New York City socialite. Relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Accounts differ on when Maxwell first met American financier Jeffrey Epstein. According to Epstein's former business partner, Stephen Hoffenberg, Robert Maxwell introduced his daughter to Epstein in the late 1980s. The Times reported that Maxwell met Epstein in the early 1990s at a New York party following a difficult breakup with Count Gianfranco Sicignamozzoni of the Siga Hotels clan. Maxwell had a romantic relationship with Epstein for several years in the early 1990s and remained closely associated with him for more than 25 years until his death in 2019. The nature of their relationship remains unclear. In a 2009 deposition, several of Epstein's household employees testified that Epstein referred to her as his main girlfriend, who also hired, fired, and supervised his staff, starting around 1992. She has also been referred to as the lady of the house by Epstein's staff and as his aggressive assistant. In a 2003 Vanity Fair profile on Epstein, author Vicky Ward said Epstein referred to Maxwell as "my best friend." Ward also observed that Maxwell seemed to organize much of his life. Politico reported that Maxwell and Epstein had friendships with several prominent individuals in elite circles of politics, academia, business, and law, including former Presidents Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, attorney Alan Dershowitz, and Prince Andrew, Duke of York. Maxwell is known for her long-standing friendship with Prince Andrew, and for having escorted him to a hookers and pimps social function in New York. She introduced Epstein to Prince Andrew, and the three often socialized together. In 2000, Maxwell and Epstein attended a party thrown by Prince Andrew at the Queen's Sandringham House estate in Norfolk, England, reportedly for Maxwell's 39th birthday. In a November 2019 interview with the BBC, Prince Andrew confirmed that Maxwell and Epstein had attended an event at his invitation, but he denied that it was anything more than a straightforward shooting weekend. In 1995, Epstein renamed one of his companies the Ghislaine Corporation, based in Palm Beach, Florida. The company was dissolved in 1998. As a trained helicopter pilot, Maxwell also transported Epstein to his private Caribbean island. In 2008, Epstein was convicted of soliciting a minor for prostitution and served 13 months of an 18-month jail sentence. Following Epstein's release, although Maxwell continued to attend prominent social functions, she and Epstein were no longer seen together publicly. By late 2015, Maxwell had largely retreated from attending social functions. Civil cases and accusations. Civil suits. I. Virginia Giuffre v. Maxwell/I. None. I. Sarah Ransom v. Epstein and Maxwell/I. None. Affidavit filed by Maria Farmer. I. Jennifer Arrayas v. Epstein's estate, Maxwell, and Jane Does 1-3/I. None. I. Priscilla Doe v. Epstein's estate/I. None. I. Annie Farmer v. Maxwell and Epstein's estate/I. None. I. Jane Doe v. Maxwell and Epstein's estate/I. None. I. Maxwell v. Epstein's estate, Darren K. and Dyke, Richard D. Kahn, and Ness LLC/I. None. I. Jane Doe v. Epstein's estate/I. None. Dispute over release of court documents. On July 2, 2019, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit ordered the unsealing of documents from the earlier civil suit against Maxwell by Virginia Giuffre. Jeffrey Epstein was arrested on July 6, 2019 at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey and charged with sex trafficking and sex trafficking conspiracy. Maxwell requested a rehearing in a federal appeals court on July 17, 2019, in an effort to keep documents sealed that were part of a suit by Giuffre. On August 9, 2019, the first batch of documents was unsealed and released from the earlier defamation suit by Giuffre against Maxwell. Epstein was found dead on August 10, 2019, after reportedly hanging himself in his Manhattan prison cell. Maxwell and her lawyers continued to argue against the further release of court documents in December 2019. Reuters confirmed on December 27, 2019 that Maxwell was under investigation by the FBI for facilitating Epstein's criminal activities. Additional documents from the Giuffre v. Maxwell defamation suit were released on July 30, 2020. The documents included a deposition given by Giuffre and more recent email exchanges between Maxwell and Epstein, with some of the correspondence from 2015. Attempts to locate Maxwell to serve court documents. On December 27, 2019, Reuters reported that Maxwell was among those under FBI investigation for facilitating Epstein. After his arrest, Maxwell was in hiding, communicating with the courts only through her lawyers who, as of January 30, 2020, had refused to accept on her behalf service of 3 lawsuits against her. The New York Times reported that by 2016, Maxwell was no longer being photographed at events. By 2017, her lawyers claimed before a judge that they did not know her address. They further stated that she was in London but they did not believe she had a permanent residence. Maxwell has a history of being unreachable during legal proceedings. During the lawsuit filed in 2017 from Ransom against Maxwell, District Judge John G. Coeltel granted a motion for alternative service on the grounds that the plaintiff's efforts to reach Maxwell were persistently thwarted. These included hiring a private investigation firm that attempted service at 3 physical addresses, sending information to several email addresses, and reaching out to the lawyers actively representing Maxwell in another lawsuit who refused to become a general agent of process to relay the information to her. According to court documents from a lawsuit filed by Epstein against Bradley Edwards, in 2010 Maxwell had agreed to provide a deposition in the case but reportedly left the country one day before Edwards was scheduled to fly to New York to take her deposition, claiming she needed to return to the United Kingdom to be with her deathly ill mother with no intention of returning to the United States. However, Maxwell returned within a month to attend Chelsea Clinton's wedding. In January 2020, it was reported that Maxwell had refused to allow her lawyers to be served with several lawsuits in which she has been directly named in 2019 and 2020, including one by Farmer and from Arayaz. While Maxwell's lawyers continued to argue on her behalf against the release of additional court documents from the Giuffre v. Maxwell lawsuit, they claimed to not know where she was or to have permission to accept the lawsuits filed against her. Authorities in the United States Virgin Islands were unsuccessful in locating Maxwell during the 3.5 months they were seeking to serve her with a subpoena. USVI prosecutors consider Maxwell to be a critical fact witness in their lawsuit against Epstein's estate. A court filing from the USVI Department of Justice, released on July 10, 2020, stated that Maxwell was also under investigation for her alleged participation in Epstein's sex trafficking operation in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Criminal charges. Arrest and indictment. Maxwell faced persistent allegations of procuring and sexually trafficking underage girls for Epstein and others, charges she denied. Maxwell was arrested in Bradford, New Hampshire by the FBI on July 2, 2020, through the use of an IMSI catcher mobile phone tracking device on a phone used by her to call one of her lawyers, her husband Scott Borgerson, and her sister Isabel. Maxwell was charged with enticement of minors, sex trafficking of children, and perjury. Prosecutors, led by United States District Attorney Audrey Strauss, charged her with 6 federal crimes, including enticement of minors, sex trafficking, and perjury. The indictment charged that between 1994 and 1997, she assisted, facilitated, and contributed to the abuse of minor girls despite knowing that one of 3 unnamed victims was 14 years old. As of April 28, 2021, Maxwell was held at the Metropolitan Detention Center, Brooklyn, New York. Lawyers requested that Judge Nathan release her on $5 million bond with monitored home confinement while awaiting trial. Maxwell appeared by video link before a court in Manhattan on July 14, 2020 and pleaded not guilty to the charges. A naturalized U.S. citizen since 2002 who also holds passports from France and the United Kingdom, Maxwell was denied bail as a flight risk amid concerns regarding her completely opaque finances, her skill at living in hiding, and the fact that France does not extradite its citizens. The judge set a trial date of July 12, 2021. Maxwell's attorney reiterated her request for bail on December 18, 2020, and proposed that Maxwell reside with a friend in New York City while under 24-hour surveillance as she awaited trial. Her husband, Scott Borgerson, made a secured offer of $22 million to guarantee her presence at future appearances. On December 28, 2020, a further request for bail was again rejected by the judge. Maxwell's bail request was opposed by alleged victim Annie Farmer. On January 19, 2021, a court hearing was disrupted by believers in QAnon who believe Maxwell to be working in cohort with a cabal of child-sacrificing Satanist liberal elites who traffic children for sex as the proceedings were illegally live-streamed to YouTube. On January 26, 2021, a motion by Maxwell's attorneys challenged her grand jury indictment, claiming that it did not reflect the ethnic diversity of the jurisdiction in which the violations of the law were alleged to have occurred. On March 29, 2021, U.S. prosecutors added new charges of sex trafficking a minor and sex trafficking conspiracy, alleging that Maxwell was involved in grooming a 4th girl, aged 14, to engage in sexual acts with Epstein between 2001 and 2004 at his residence in Palm Beach. Maxwell pleaded not guilty to the additional charges. She faced 6 counts that included sex trafficking of a minor and sex trafficking conspiracy, in addition to 2 counts of perjury. Maxwell's attorneys regularly protested about the conditions of her confinement, which included being kept awake by a light shown in her eyes every 15 minutes to deter the chances of her committing suicide, and being denied a sleep mask. 1. David Marcus protested, "There's no evidence she's suicidal. They're doing it because Jeffrey Epstein died on their watch, and that, she's not Jeffrey Epstein, this isn't right." Sex trafficking trial. In April 2021, U.S. District Judge Allison Nathan ruled that Maxwell would face 2 separate trials, one for the sex trafficking charges and another for perjury. Nathan delayed the first trial to November 29, 2021 after Maxwell's defense lawyers successfully argued that the new charges added in March 2021 did not give them enough time to prepare for trial. Maxwell appeared in court on November 15, 2021. The trial commenced on November 29 with opening statements. 12 jurors had been picked, plus 6 alternates, from a pool of 40 to 60 people. Psychology professor Elizabeth Loftus was called as an expert witness for the defense and provided testimony on false memory syndrome. Maxwell chose not to testify, telling the judge, "Your Honor, the government has not proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt. So there is no need for me to testify." A spokesperson for Maxwell's family had previously said she was too fragile to testify. In early December 2021, Twitter censored @Tracker Trial, an account monitoring Maxwell's trial. The account was 2 weeks old and had 525,000 followers before its suspension. On December 28, as the jury completed its 4th full day of deliberations, Judge Nathan said she feared jurors and trial participants might become infected with COVID-19 and forced to quarantine, raising the possibility of a mistrial. She later said that she had extended the jury's hours to 6 p.m. and would also have deliberations continue through the holiday weekend until the jury reached a verdict. Conviction. Perjury trial. Maxwell faces a second criminal trial for perjury on 2 charges that she lied under oath during a civil suit in 2015 about Epstein's abuse of underage girls. Each count carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison. Prosecutors have said that perjury charges will be dropped if she is sentenced on schedule. Following a petition for a new trial, submitted under seal, prosecutors told the judge on February 4 that Maxwell's arguments for a retrial must be publicly docketed. The judge said that the reasons for making the submission under seal must be made public.